Hi, it's me Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe my channel and visit my Patreon page, link in the description. My assignments for Saturday and Sunday were to cover the grand opening of a water slide park and several hours of observing boat launchings at a recreational park along the river, respectively. Both were hardly earth-shaking events, but they were important to the people that enjoyed such activities. Sunday night, as on past weekends, was date night. George, Larry, Kent, and Steve came over, and we all went out, mostly to separate destinations. It was too hot for any physical activity, so George and I opted for a nice air-conditioned theater, as did Lisbeth and Larry. Of course, the house was air-conditioned, so the rec room provided the perfect after-theater location to complete the evening. Arriving at the station on Monday, I found a note on my desk that told me to report to Mr. Graham's office. I walked upstairs and waited until he was free. "Come in, Ashley. Have a seat. How have you been getting along?" "Fine, Mr. Graham," I said as I sat down. "Thank you. Mr. Pylora has been to see me today twice. I assume that you know what he wants." "Yes, he spoke to me on Friday." "And how do you feel about it?" I told him that I only have about 9 more weeks left in my employment time here. "I didn't think that you'd want to break in another weather girl at this point. But how do you feel about his proposal?" "I'll do whatever job you want me to do. I've been happy being the weather girl, and I'm perfectly content to remain in that position for the remainder of my employment term. The position that he'd like you to fill encompasses a great deal more responsibility. It would be a much better recommendation on your resume once you complete college. It might even help you get into the college of your choice. I think that my grades are adequate to get me into any college that I could afford. If I was to move to a reporter position, you'd have to start interviewing people again, and Keith might have to fill in again. I know that he'd hate that. In this business, people are highly mobile, so I'm used to interviewing people on a regular basis. One of the 2 runners-up might even still be available for immediate placement. If you were moved to the reporter position, you'd be required to do a lot more work. Instead of just reading off the teleprompter or conducting interviews for human interest stories, you'd have to do your homework. You'd have to understand the issues and the background of the people you'd be interviewing. The position pays better because it requires a lot more work. I'm not afraid of work, and I'll do whichever job you want, Mr. Graham. I'm perfectly happy where I am, and I'm sure that I'd be happy in the other job. You sure are hard to please, he said, smiling. I knew that he was being witty, so I didn't respond other than to smile. After a few seconds, he said, "Okay, Ashley. I'll give the matter some more thought and tell you what I decide. That's all." "Thank you, Mr. Graham," I said as I left. Little changed over the following weeks. I continued on as the KBXF weather girl at 6 and 10 on weeknights, and I continued to work on fluff pieces on weekends. Mr. Pylora did ask me a couple of times if I had changed my mind, but I always responded that I was happy in my position and would be leaving in the beginning of September. He would just smile and shake his head a little. Lisbeth and I spent most of our weekdays shopping. She had quite a bit of money from her work at the catering business, and I had quite a bit myself, even though most of my money was deposited into an account that I had opened. Of the slightly over $1,000 a week I received in net pay, I never kept out more than $100 for my spending money. One of the things that did change was being recognized nearly everywhere I went. People that I had never met would say, "Hi, Ashley," and continue on while I tried to remember if we'd met. Usually I just smiled and waved. In mid-July, I called the bus station to inquire about my lost luggage. The clerk there told me that I should come in and pick up my bags. Suzanne brought Lisbeth and me to the station on the first morning that she had off. I told the clerk that I was there to retrieve my suitcases and handed him the receipt. He disappeared into the back and returned with the 2 bags, asking me to sign a receipt before giving them to me. I signed and he placed the cases on the counter. Before taking the cases, I opened them to check the contents and discovered that they were both filled with the clothes I had turned in. "These aren't my cases," I said to the clerk. "These are the cases I turned in." "Really?" he said. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am." "Let me check," he said, disappearing into the back room again. He returned a few minutes later with the claim form that I filed. "You're absolutely correct, Miss James. Your cases were never recovered. Would you like to keep these cases instead? The report says that they're identical to the ones you lost. That would replace my cases, but what about my clothes? If you'd prefer, I can offer you a cash settlement of $100. $100? That barely covers the cost of the suitcases. That's the bus company's standard claim settlement. It's the best I can do. Either way, I wasn't going to get my jeans, so I scowled and took the suitcases. At least I had cases identical to those I'd left home with. Lisbeth took one case and I grabbed the other. Don't worry, Ashley, Lisbeth said. I'll alter these things to fit you. You probably made out better in the long run. Except I don't have any jeans for my return home. There's still the jeans that you arrived in. Yeah, where are they? Oh, they're at the house. Don't worry. I didn't say anything further about it because I knew that I couldn't wear them anyway. I was too well known now to venture outside the house dressed as a boy. It seemed strange that I had once feared stepping outside the house dressed as a girl. Lisbeth didn't wait once we reached the house and immediately began to spread the contents of both suitcases around my room. Oh, Ashley, you struck gold. I can't believe that these cases were never claimed. Look at these clothes, they're beautiful. Look at this gray suede skirt with matching jacket and boots. And everything is your size. The shoes and boots are perfect, and we can alter the skirts for your smaller waist. The jacket will be a little tight in the chest, but it's not too bad. The previous owner isn't as well endowed as you are. Holding up one of the nightgowns in front of me as I stood in front of the mirror, I said, I don't understand either. These things are absolutely gorgeous. Whoever owned them must be very wealthy to simply forget about these things. I wonder why she was traveling by bus. Maybe she was an eccentric. Look at this fantastic sweater. Try it on. It's too warm out for sweaters. You don't have to wear it outside today. Just try it on. I took the sweater and pulled it on over my head. That is so you, she said. Fix your hair. I want to take a picture. I grimaced as Lisbeth went to get her digital camera, but I sat down in front of my makeup table and brushed my hair. I also touched up my makeup before Lisbeth returned. Stand up over there, she said when she returned. I stood where she'd pointed as she looked through the viewfinder. After a few seconds, she took the picture. I started to move away, but she told me to stop. It didn't come out good. Let me shoot it again. I posed for her several more times, but she wasn't satisfied with any of them. I don't like the background, she said. It's too busy. It takes too much away from the subject. I know. Let's go to the garage. The walls are a light gray in there. I followed along to the garage and spent the next 15 minutes posing for Lisbeth. I was starting to get a little irritated, but she suddenly announced that we were done. That last one was perfect, she said. The light coming in from the windows on your left illuminated you perfectly. I didn't use the flash, and the natural sunlight created the perfect look. Want to see? Sure, I said, squinting to see the image on the tiny viewing screen on the back of the camera. I was quite used to seeing my image as a woman and thought of myself that way most of the time. I had almost lost touch with my male self, and it only resurfaced when I was bathing or using the bathroom. It looks a lot better than those pictures of me at the dance. Those were classics also, she said, grinning. Not because of their artistic quality, though. Come on, Ashley. Let's see about altering your new clothes. We spent the next few hours working on the clothes, with me as a model and Lisbeth as a seamstress. I still had a month left on my punishment sentence, so I couldn't refuse to cooperate, but it would have been nice if I could have worn them as they were. Lisbeth created a lot of extra work for herself because of her insistence that they hug my form. The gray suede skirt gave her the most problem because of the thickness of the leather, but she managed to get it done before I left. She had altered the waist to 21 inches and taken it in so much that I had to wiggle my way into it. She had left it almost knee length, and I couldn't see where I'd have an opportunity to wear it because in mid-July it was far too warm for suede skirts and boots. Lisbeth was still working at her sewing machine when I left with Nicole. The following Saturday morning, Dennis and I were sent out to cover an antique car show. After he had shot footage of all the cars, I interviewed a few owners and did a report about the event. I was still wearing the clothes from the boutique during weather reports, but wore my own clothes on weekends. I guess that I had dressed a little too sexy because a crowd of males followed us wherever we went. Sometimes people simply want to get their face on television, but these guys didn't care about that and never stopped looking at me in the extra tight miniskirt. I was glad when we were done because I was tired of being gawked at with suggestive expressions. It was still before 10 a.m. when Dennis picked up something on his scanner while we headed back to the station. He turned the van around and floored the accelerator. "What's up?" I asked. "Some kind of accident on the interstate near an overpass. They're calling for a dozen fire trucks and a dozen ambulances." Must be serious. Arriving at the scene, we immediately recognized the problem and the danger. A fuel tanker truck had flipped on the overpass and fuel was leaking down onto the interstate highway below. Traffic had been stopped, but not before a dozen cars and trucks had crashed after skidding through the slippery, dripping fuel that covered the eastbound traffic lanes. Dennis immediately prepared the truck for a live uplink and made contact with the station. I spent the time talking with the few police and fire officials that would give me a minute. As soon as the truck and equipment was ready, we started shooting footage. I did an introduction, quoting from the information that I had learned, and Dennis panned the overturned fuel tanker, the accident scene below, and the long lines of backed-up traffic. We spent the next several hours at the accident scene, broadcasting almost continuously on instruction from the station, as fire trucks arrived to spray fire retardant foam, ambulances took the injured away to area hospitals, and state police helicopters circled continuously above. Another tanker truck arrived and was able to offload the fuel that still remained in the crashed truck. Things became quite a bit calmer once that was completed. Wreckers moved in and cleared the damaged vehicles, including the tanker that had caused the problem. My throat was dry after talking for hours. I knew that local programming had been interrupted and my reports were going out live. As when I was in the studio, I had people talking in my earphone while I was trying to give my report, and I was asked questions about the accident that I tried to answer. I managed to bring in several officials during the broadcast to talk about the accident, victims, and possible repercussions, such as delayed traffic and damage to the overpass and interstate highway. It was almost 6 p.m. by the time we packed up and headed back to the station. The incredibly hot and humid weeks of July slowly turned into the slightly more comfortable weeks of August. Perhaps it was because I had essentially turned down the news reporter position, a fact that had circulated around the station in hours, or perhaps it was something else, but I didn't have any more problems with Kay Peterson. Still, I was always on my guard when I was around her. During the broadcast, you'd think that we were the best of friends, but as soon as it was over, the friendly dialogue shut down faster than the very bright, expensive studio lights. If anyone else held any hostility towards me, it wasn't evident. I think that everyone knew by then I was leaving at the end of the month and posed no threat to their chances for promotion. After 2 months, I was as comfortable in the role as weather girl as I was ever going to be. No matter what glitches were thrown at me, I weathered the storm. There had been a couple of minor things, such as when the device that I used to change the image on the screen refused to work. And another time the teleprompter suddenly went blank for a few seconds. But I carried on as though nothing was wrong, ad-libbing a line or two until the problem was either resolved or I managed a way around it. During the first week of August, I was told to report to Mr. Graham's office. With just 3.5 weeks of employment left, I wondered why I was being called in now, but he was the station manager, and, like always, I hurried to his office. "Come in, Ashley. Have a seat." I sat down on the couch across from his desk and crossed my legs. "Have you thought any more about moving here and remaining with the station?" "Of course, Mr. Graham. I think about it all the time because it was such a wonderful offer and opportunity. But it's just not practical. It's been a great experience working here, and I'm sorry that I have to leave. I've been very happy here, and I'll really miss everyone very much. If you find that you'd like to stay, you'll have a job here. You've been a real asset to the station, and you're always in a cheerful mood. We really hate to lose you. For that matter, if you think that you'll be here next summer, I'll make sure a position is available for you. Thank you, Mr. Graham. It's a little too early to predict what will happen between now and then, but I'd love to work here again. If I expect to come out here, I'll contact you to see if something is available." "Fine, Ashley. Is there anything else?" "Yes, there is, as a matter of fact. Kay Peterson has signed a contract with a station in San Francisco. She'll be leaving on the 15th of this month. We don't feel that any of our regular reporters can handle the job, so we've hired someone from outside the station. I know that the news won't be taken very well by a couple of people that have had their eye on her position. Yes, I know there'll be some disappointment, but we can't place people in positions they're not suited for. Perhaps with a few more years' experience, they'll be able to handle the job when it opens up again. I nodded. Anyway, I called you in here to ask a very special favor. I wondered if you'd fill in for Kay until the new person starts. Fill in. Yes, we need someone for a few weeks. The new person can't be here until Labor Day because her present station won't release her from her contract until then. It's a small station with only one anchor during the week. They only broadcast the news at noon and 6. I'll be happy to help, but I'm supposed to start school the day after Labor Day. That's not a problem. You'll be done on the 5th. That will give you 3 days to get home for school. It only takes a couple of hours by air. I came by bus. I still have my return ticket. The station will buy you a plane ticket. I thought about it for a few seconds before saying, okay, Mr. Graham. I'm your girl. I'll do it for the 3 weeks. Wonderful. What about the weather? We'll find someone to do it. Don't worry about it. Maybe I could handle it also. I think that it would be too much. You'll have your hands full with just the news. The anchor position is a lot more work. You not only have to read the news, you have to understand it. Otherwise, it'll be obvious that you're not prepared. As soon as you get in each day, you'll have to read the stories coming in from the news services. If you don't understand something, you'll have to seek help from one of the newsroom staff or ask in the daily meeting. You have 2 weeks, so I suggest that you start watching as much nightly news as you can stand. Once you begin the new job, you won't be expected to handle assignments on the weekends. I've been listening to Dawn and Kay every evening for the past 2 months, so I think that I'm current on the news. You have to be more than current. You'll have to have an in-depth understanding. I know that you can do it and that you'll be ready, but doing the weather reporting would add another layer that you don't need on your shoulders when you're starting a new job. Okay, Mr. Graham. Good girl. I wish that we could have talked you into staying on here, but we understand. Perhaps the television station in your hometown has a position open. I'll be happy to give you a reference that will make them eager to hire you. Thank you, Mr. Graham. If I decide to apply, I'll use you as a reference. You do that. Thank you, Ashley. Be prepared to start your new duties at 3 o'clock on the 18th. That's all. Okay, Mr. Graham. Thank you. As I walked back to my desk, I knew that I'd never use Mr. Graham's name as a reference, but after he generously offered, I couldn't very well not thank him. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.